Okay. This here is a really lovely quote, which I think really sums up why statistics is important. So Nate Silver is an American economist, I think. He's still alive, and he wrote a fantastic book called The Signal and the Noise. And he said, the numbers have no way of speaking for themselves. We speak for them. In other words, we are the ones that imbue them with meaning. Now, if you don't really relate to this yet, hopefully, over the next sort of couple of lectures, you'll start to think, actually, do you know what? I kind of understand what this means. Okay, so I'm just going to leave it there for the time being, let it sink in, and then we can hopefully, we'll hopefully sort of build on that. Right? So here's what I'm going to start. What is the point of statistics? What is the point of statistics? Well, as I said, statistics are widely used in media. They're widely used in newspapers, they're widely used in the news, they're widely used on social media. Okay? And this is a real-life example of where statistics is being used, and I think it illustrates my point perfectly. So in 2011, there was an advert on the London Underground, which said that 99% of young Londoners do not commit crime. Now, just to give you a bit of a background to this, 2011, there was a young black man living in London, quite a poor sort of area of London, that was shot by SCO19, which is the London Metropolitan Police Firearms Unit. Okay, and there was sort of an outcry because it's apparently the community felt that he was shot unjustly. Okay, he ended up dying, and so as a result, a lot of young Londoners sort of went out and they rioted. Okay, so you might have remembered this, it's about 10 years ago, but I distinctly remember it. And they basically went out and there was riots, and then it gradually grew and grew and grew. So the majority of London rioted in 2011, and then suddenly Manchester started rioting, and other cities around the country started rioting. And the perception of other people, so they basically did a survey, and they asked people, and they said, well actually, what do you think of young Londoners? Do you think that they are capable of violent crime? And worryingly, over 40% of people that were asked thought young people were like violent criminals, right? And actually, when they look at it, it was only 1% of the people were the people that were committing the violent crime. 99% of young Londoners were completely innocent, like they were just young people just going about their daily lives. So it's kind of the warped perception of what media can get across. But I really want to play on this advert, because this advert is framed in a very particular way. And I think it perfectly illustrates what the point of statistics is. It's all about how we put our point across. Okay? So, they have framed it from a positive point of view. We literally call that positive framing. Okay? They literally said that 99% of young Londoners do not commit serious youth violence. Okay? What would a negative framing be, do you think?
There is one.
Absolutely.
One young Londoners through 100.
Exactly. Yeah. So the negative framing would be that 1% of young Londoners do commit violent crime. So do you see that difference? I'm talking about exactly the same statistics, but it depends on how I frame it. I'm focusing, so the advert is focusing on positive framing. It's trying to say, this is actually a really good thing. The majority of young Londoners are completely innocent. They go about their daily life. But if there was somebody who wanted to, say, sell a story, you could have done it from the perspective of a negative framing, which says that 1% of young Londoners do. Now, admittedly, this isn't a very good story. So I could play on this and manipulate the statistics even more to get a particular point across. Okay, so let's play on this. In 2011, there were approximately 1 million young Londoners living in London. Okay, so if we actually do the statistics on this, if we actually do the calculations, okay, we look at the positive framing, and we say, well, okay, 99% of the young Londoners, 99% of the million young Londoners, gives us 990,000 young, non-violent people who are living in London. Okay? But if we do it with the negative framing, can anybody do that quickly in their heads? How many young people were serious, violent criminals?
10,000.
Absolutely. Right? Now let's think about this. So imagine if I was actually trying to get a point across. Okay? Imagine I was sort of a lead editor of a newspaper or something, and I wanted to sell stories. Let's think about this. Does this sell headlines? 1% of young Londoners commit serious youth violence.
Nope.
Doesn't sound that scary, right? In fact, your reaction would probably be something like this, right? Who cares? Yeah? Whereas, if I played on exactly the same statistic, but framed it from a different point of view, said it slightly differently, I said 10,000 young Londoners commit serious youth violence, your reaction would probably be something like this, right? Now just bear in mind, my point is, I'm talking about exactly the same statistics, okay? But it's all about how you put that statistic across, okay? So the one on the right is probably going to sell more newspapers. So if you're like the reporter of a national newspaper, you're probably going to go with the one on the right because it catches people's attention. Okay? And people suddenly go, oh my goodness, young people are all violent. But they're really not. Okay? So my point is just bear that in mind. Just because you see a headline that looks like that, doesn't mean that it's true. Another example, quite a topical example. Has anybody seen this before? Has anybody seen this bus before? So at the moment we're kind of in a little bit of a national crisis, because you've probably heard the UK wants to leave the European Union, right? Now, a part of this campaign, so 2016 when they did this campaign, was this bus. It's become quite an infamous bus, because apparently they had sort of labelled on the side of the bus, literally this slogan, we send the EU £350 million every single week. We could use that money to fund the NHS instead, therefore we should vote to leave the European Union. Okay? And a lot of people bought into this slogan. A lot of people were kind of cited as saying, we're sending all this money to the European Union, we should be using that to fund the NHS itself instead. But if you actually think about this statistic, oh, by the way, this number is completely wrong, by the way. We don't send the European Union £350 million, but that's behind the point. If we actually think about what this number means, right, how would you make this number small? How would you put this number in perspective? Has anybody got any ideas? Sorry? Billion. Okay, yeah, that's true. But let's imagine we did send the European Union £350 million every single week. How would you actually put this in perspective? How would you actually understand what this figure means?
Percent of GDP.
Good, exactly. So in other words, you put this money in relation to how many people there are living in the UK. Okay? So there's about 66 million people living in the UK, right? Let's actually break it down per person. Let's break it down per person. So we take that £350 million, we split it amongst all the 66 million people living in the UK. That works out as about £5.30 per person per week. Yeah? Happy with that? And in fact, we can break that number down even smaller and break it down per day. And if we break it down per day, it works out 76 pence per day, which is about the price of a pack of crisps, right? Now suddenly, that number doesn't sound so bad anymore, does it? Yeah? So it's all to do with, this is a very kind of manipulated headline. It's a statistic, it's correct, like factually it's correct, but you need to put it in relation to the bigger picture, okay? If you put on the side of a bus this slogan instead, we send the EU a packet of crisps every day, do you think it's going to capture the same attention? No. Okay? So just be aware, just because it's in the newspaper, don't trust it. Okay? Think about it critically. Think about it critically.